Hello everyone and welcome back to the SteemTrail Gaming podcast. Today is the 28th of April. My name is Kralizec and I will be your host for the evening. Today we got three pieces of news for you guys. First, we're going to look at PETA, the animal rights organization, who has been attacking Far Cry 5 for some reason. I really don't understand why, but we will talk a bit more about that. Secondly, we're going to talk about Fortnite again, because it is the game that is to be, seems to be, as it generated over $200 million in revenue just in the month of March alone. And last of all, we're going to take a look at Steam Spy, as it is not dead. But let's begin with PETA, which has decided to criticize Far Cry 5 for fishing out of all the possible reasons they could have chosen. So if you guys don't know this, but I would be really surprised if you didn't, PETA is an animal rights organization that pretty often makes major media announcements like we shouldn't be using animals to test our products, etc. They got famous for wearing clothes made from for not wanting to wear clothes made from animal stuff, for not wanting to eat stuff, you know, all the general animal protection stuff. But lately, they have decided to attack Far Cry 5 because the game includes fishing as sort of a mini game. Interestingly enough, they don't care about the rest of the violence that could be possibly inflicted on animals in the game. Why choose fishing is really the part I just don't understand. The Ubisoft German division actually responded to this. No, it didn't respond to the statement that goes like this. While in previous game fish were killed with explosives, the player in Far Cry 5 can catch different kinds of fish with the fishing rod and gets different points of view depending on the type of fish. PETA now appeals to the German representation of the game developer Ubisoft GmbH in Düsseldorf in the future no longer market video games in Germany, glorifying and banalizing the hunting and killing of fish or other animals. The animal rights organization proposes instead to develop games with free-living animals that do not glorify killing as a pastime. What? So first of all, you need to realize this. We are omnivores. That means we also eat meat. It's one of the most basic things you can say about humans as a species. We eat both plants and meat. Both are an important part of our diet. Yes, the protein that is normally gotten through meat can be gotten through a few supplements, but not those supplements are not available to everybody. And I, for example, would be a huge proponent of artificially grown meat if that could be available instead of meat gathered from fishing, from hunting, or from just cow. It just seems super weird. But the weirdest part about this is the fact that they criticize only the fishing. They don't criticize the fact that you can literally throw a grenade at a bear and watch him explode. And that's not a problem. I guess I would have understood that, as it would be like, you know, that glorifies the violence against animals. But fishing? Fishing? Really? It just seems so out of place and so hypocritical, and I'm just at a loss for words, to be honest. And there have been so many games that have been criticized by PETA in the past for the quote-unquote abuse of animals. Even Mario, for some reason. It's just a fucking game. It's not hurting real animals. And shouldn't, in the end, you be glad that people who like fishing are rather doing it in a game rather than going out in the real world and killing real fish? Wouldn't that be a better thing for PETA? I just don't get this. It just seems like your typical leftist bullshit and... what? So, and PETA itself is a company just layered in controversy itself. You know, that's another part of the story. You know, PETA, they very often buy animals from ranges where they claim they are being treated inhumanely. You know what they do with them? They kill them. Because they do not have the resources to take care of them. Wouldn't it be better for the animal to be kept alive rather than die? Just, I don't know. I do believe that animals do have certain rights. I don't believe they should have the same rights as humans as, let's be blunt, we worked our asses as a species collectively to get to the top of the food chain, or whatever you want to call it. It's not necessarily the food chain. Let's call it the evolution chain, actually. We really worked hard, and there were many times we were on the brink of extinction. Why should we care? If we are able to sustain ourselves as a species and sustain the biosphere, is there really that big of a problem if an animal dies out? I honestly don't believe so. I love animals. I love dogs. I love cats. I love horses. I love even mythical, like dragons. I'm okay with dealing with chicken. I'm okay with pigs. I love wild animals. I lived in the forest for the vast majority of my childhood. But they're animals. We're humans. And whether you like it or not, life is a war between all the species for the survival of the species. And if a species has to die out for humans to be able to live and to live better, I'm honestly okay with that. And again, if there are ways to treat animals better without worsening the lives of humans, that's great. That's fucking amazing. But please, PETA, understand one thing. Humans, whether you like it or not, are more important than individual animals. The biosphere might be more important than humans. But if we are capable to sustain our lives on this earth, and some species has to die out for us to be able to achieve that, that's okay. Man, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for saying that. Well, it's already said there and it's out on the internet and I don't really give a shit. So, with that, let's move on to the second piece of news for today, which is about Fortnite, which is just continuing to astonish me with the rate of success it has managed to get. As in the month of March, it generated over 200 million and 23 additional millions of revenue in a single month. That's insane. That's an insane amount of money. That, if let's say they manage to sustain that revenue, that's over $1 billion in revenue per year. It averages out to about $7.19 million of revenue per day. One single day. 24 hours. That's bonkers. About 1.8 million from that is done just from the mobile part of the game. So yeah, I was right. That part of the Fortnite IP is generating so much money considering how much development was likely put into that. And yeah, good for you, Epic. hope you take the money and make many great games with it, because that's really what I want to see. Make sure you invest a large portion of it and invest it in great games, because then gamers will love you even more. Okay, and our last piece of news is about Steam Spy. And if you don't know what Steam Spy is, it's essentially a database about Steam, about which games are being sold, how many users own them, for how long they have been played, etc, etc. Many statistics have been available in the past 3 years on Steam Spy, thanks to its creator Sergey Galankin. But sadly, Steam Spy has to overcome a major hurdle, as we reported it was like weeks ago? Yeah, I think it was a few weeks ago, when Steam changed their APIs and made it that many of the information Steam Spy needed to operate correctly were made invisible by default. Unless the user specifically came out and made their data available, they just weren't available. But now Sergey Galankin has came out and said, we're not dead, though we are not as precise as we were. Interestingly enough, most of the people, including me, thought that the changes to Steam's API were driven by the European General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. But Mr. Galankin thinks that this is not the fact. He actually wrote a Steam post and said, where is it? Real names, achievements, groups, screenshots, and friends are still public by default, and the Steam URL hasn't been updated to comply with the new privacy regulations. The same is true of more recent changes to the store API. Like the previous change, this one wasn't caused by GDPR compliance either. It's hard to imagine Valve protecting its store's privacy. And, well, when he put it like that, it does make sense. But I will still sustain the claim that, at least in part, the changes to the APIs were caused by GDPR. At least partially. Probably not fully. And the changes to the store APIs, those I actually doubt that were changed because of GDPR. Valve hasn't told us much about changes, although it has confirmed a proposal he actually submitted to enable Steam Spy to operate without the exposure of personal data. But yeah, who knows whether they will actually comply. And additionally, he actually told us that he received more than 200 messages from developers telling him about how Steam Spy improved their lives. And these are actually some very interesting stories, so let me read those to you. For example, there was an indie company from Berlin that managed to secure financing from the government for their niche title because they had the data to prove that the niche was big enough. And their title got released and it succeeded. Or there was another mid-sized publisher that entered the business after it was able to see which games are selling and which aren't. And, you know, then there's many more such stories about studios actually looking at the data and being able to form their business plan around this. And this has likely largely driven the growth of the gaming industry in the past few years. If you take a look at the growth of the rate of growth of games being released on Steam in the past few years, you can see it just skyrocketed. It's almost like an exponential curve. And yeah, it seems that Steam Spy played a pretty big role in this. And I'm really hoping that Valve will be able to find some sort of agreement with Steam Spy so the companies could benefit from this. Because let's be honest, the more games there are on Steam, the more money Steam makes. Thus, likely them having an incentive to actually do it without looking like complete idiots. And I really hope they do, because looking through the statistics provided by SteemTrail was one of the highlights of my year. Every single time. And with that being said, that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving us a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribing to the channel. If you are watching on Steam, maybe you want to give us an upvote and follow the blog. Either way, be sure to leave a comment. And be sure to tune in tomorrow, because tomorrow the weekly podcast with me and Tygergamer returns. See you guys later with more gaming content.